Good afternoon and welcome to today's discussion on learning through social media in the college classroom. My name is Rebecca Gunn. I teach at Oral Roberts University in the marketing area, and I'm just going to be sharing some things about what I have discovered through some research regarding social media and the use of that within the college classroom. We've all seen it. We've seen the cell phones, we've seen the laptops, the iPads, the tablets, the whatever going on during our classroom lectures. And so is there anything that we can do as professors where we can take the concept of social media and bring it into the classroom, into the learning experience of our students to allow them to engage on this type of platform? This is really the question that I was seeking to answer when I started looking at these different types of topics that were available out there. So in looking at some different advantages, I wanted to first start with a study that was done by Pearson Education, in which they actually quoted a few different quotes from professors regarding social media and the use of it within the college classroom. This one specifically says, teaching students to think and learn through social media is a vital thing that needs to be done in today's college classrooms. And in addition, it is time that technology is integrated in the classes that we teach to effectively achieve maximum production. And so from some faculty perspective, it is actually something that should be incorporated into college classrooms. So from some advantages, when we are able to incorporate it into our college classrooms, what we see is that it allows for the free flowing of communication. And really there is no time for which learning can end. Learning can take place during our lectures, but it can also take place as soon as people walk out the doors of our classroom. It can take place in the dorm rooms. Wherever a student may be and has the capability to engage on a social media platform, learning can still take place. There's no time constraints with it as well. For those who may have shyer personalities or not really engage much within classroom discussion, they can get on to a social media platform and start engaging in some discussion from an online perspective. It allows for faster feedback between students and faculty, or even peer-to-peer, student to student, and they can have discussions online, which can then allow them to have higher levels of satisfaction they may feel regarding what they are learning within the college classroom. In addition, it allows them to perhaps learn how to utilize social media from not only a personal point of view, but it also would incorporate them to allow learning within a professional and an educational perspective that will allow them, when they get out of college, to engage on social media from the professional standpoint. So this also allows some additional points of creativity, and so using social media as a platform of learning within the college classroom has a lot of different advantages. But there are also some disadvantages and some reasons on why we haven't maybe seen it incorporated on the college level perhaps quite as much as some other areas. Some disadvantages certainly can take place from faculty, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment, but also happen from a student's perspective. And from a student's view, some disadvantages that they see with the requirement of using social media within the classroom is that it can take time to figure out what's going on and creating additional accounts. They don't want an invasion of privacy to take place. They don't want their professors to see what they're doing on the weekends or where they're going on vacation or what they're eating for lunch. They want to know that their information is being held safe for their friends whom they choose to want to see it. And so there are some disadvantages from a student's perspective that they will actually create additional and numerous accounts to engage with professors using social media. Now, from a faculty perspective, there's a little bit more of the disadvantages that can take place when utilizing social media from the college level. We see that there are privacy issues, same type of thing. The faculty members don't really want students to know where they live or what they're doing or how they may spend their free time, and so the same type of issues are taking place there. The integrity of student submissions. If there is content created online, how do we guarantee that this is going to be in true actuality that student who is communicating via the social media platform? Assessing the impact, and that's really what this focus is. This study is about. The focus is looking at the assessment. How do we figure out if there really is learning taking place? The time it might take to learn a social media platform, as well as maintaining it over time. It can be a distraction to students, both in and out of the classroom, so how do we deal with that? The addition of workload and stress by having and engaging on social media platforms, it can add workload to professors and additional stress because now students can contact them outside of just the classroom and outside of office hours. And then just assigning grades. How does one do that using social media? Quote I found by a study by Aidan Jordan says that the difficulty posed by the rapid development of social media is that once educators have figured out how to integrate sites such as YouTube or Twitter into their curriculum, one or more social media sites or trends may have sprung into existence, and the entire learning process starts over again rendering the use of older forms of social media obsolete. And so this is also a disadvantage that is having to be considered within the implementation of using social media within the classroom. Then there's all the social media platforms that one has available to use. One that I think that looks specifically into some of these issues is Edmodo. And Edmodo is actually called the Facebook, or the educational Facebook, because of the way in which it is formatted. It looks very similar to Facebook, so when students use it, it's something that is similar to what they would expect to see on Facebook. It gets rid of some of those concerns such as privacy. We only have one account, and it can be used for all of the educational classes that somebody may be involved in. So they don't have to have 5 different Facebooks or 10 different Twitters or whatever might be going on here. And similar thing for the faculty as well. There's also areas to assess with quizzes and polling that can take place and contributions on this site. And so for the particular study that I engaged in, I did look at Edmodo, and we'll look at that here just real briefly again. I did a pre-test and post-test survey over 2 different semesters of my principles of marketing students, looking specifically at vocabulary and definition words, and really allowing my students to not so much contribute to a social media platform, but more of just the consumption of information from a social media platform. So let's start with the site that I chose to use, Edmodo. Like I said, I really feel that it kind of takes into consideration some of those disadvantages and concerns that faculty have when implementing social media. And so this is kind of taking care of that. This is the home page for when students would need to sign up for it, or faculty members. One concern that I had initially right off the bat is that it looks like the target market might be a little bit more geared towards the K through 12th grade student. And so when I did introduce it into my class, I made sure that my students were aware that it was not a requirement of the class, that it would just be for them as an additional learning resource, that they would have that opportunity to engage on and get some additional information for them. My sample, like I said, were Principles of Marketing students. In the fall, my semester 1, I had about 105 Principles of Marketing students, and in the semester 2, or the spring semester, I had 2 sections of about 85 students. So they were the sample for this particular experiment. My methodology, like I had mentioned earlier with using Edmodo, I primarily had what I called the word of the day. So I chose different vocabulary words from the topics of which we were discussing within that class of that day, and I would have my word of the day. So each day there was a lecture, there was also a corresponding word of the day, word and definition, that was posted onto Edmodo, similarly like what you can see on the screen behind me. And so with Edmodo, they could see the word of the day and the vocabulary word that were being used, and perhaps reinforce some of the topics in which were discovered or which were talked about that day. There would also be different tips and reminders that would be shown on Edmodo. Pre-test and post-test were used both in semester 1 and semester 2. For the pre-test, in semester 1, there were 20 questions that were asked. Those same 20 questions were the same questions that appeared on the post-test. So 20 questions for both the pre-test and the post-test, the vocabulary words and definitions. And then on the post-test, there were questions for those who had engaged in Edmodo, what they liked about it, what they didn't, how often they may have used it, did they find it beneficial. The pre-test was on the first Monday of the semester, and the post-test was the last Monday of the semester. So they had about 15 weeks in the span of time in which they could use Edmodo and really glean information from it. For the post-test or the pre-test and post-test of semester 2, the pre-test just had 14 questions on it, and it was given the first Monday of the semester with vocabulary words and definitions. But then rather than waiting for the entire semester, I gave the post-test 4 weeks after they initially started using Edmodo and after their first exam. So it wasn't an entire semester's worth of information they were trying to go through on a post-test. And also just seeing initially some of the responses that I might have had from Edmodo. There were 6 questions on the post-test, not 14, so it was a relatively quick and easy, painless type of post-test. And like I said, it was just the 4 weeks after from pre-test to post-test. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of my results, looking specifically first individually at semester 1, semester 2, having some discussion in there, some limitations, and then also areas for future research. With semester 1, there were 80 students total that were able to take both the pre-test and the post-test. There were 105 students, but due to changing of scheduling and a variety of different issues, absences, tardies, there were 80 that ended up taking the post-test and the pre-test, and 18 of them were Edmodo users. There were 6 questions on the post-test that contained words that were on Edmodo. So of those 20 questions, really only 6 was I able to go into and really analyze some of the information that was there. This table that you can see here shows you some of the differences in terms of those who did use Edmodo and those who did not. Some things that I want to highlight here real briefly. Most of the percentage change of correct responses were more so on the non-Edmodo users, but there was one question in which my Edmodo users did have a higher percentage change of responses. They generally did score higher individually, but in terms of the percentage change, this was the only question in which I saw an actual increase of correct responses. The rest of them were lower, but especially number 3, I actually saw a decrease in the number of students who got this one correct and did use Edmodo. So a little bit of some concerns there. With semester 2, I had 46 students who engaged in both the pre-test and the post-test. 14 of them, or 14 of my students in total, were Edmodo users. However, only 10 of them took the post-test, and of those 10, only 5 actually had taken the pre-test. So I only had 5 students in which to use their information from the pre-test and post-test. 5 questions on the post-test were specifically related to words that they had seen on Edmodo. Here's a graph again, kind of showing some of the results that I had pertaining to the pre-test and post-test Edmodo and non-Edmodo users. A little bit of some differences here. My Edmodo users did score higher on 2 of the questions in terms of the percentage change of correct responses that were taking place. 2 of the questions they did a little bit lower. There were no negative numbers though this time, and question 3 was about equal for both my Edmodo and non-Edmodo users. From a usage perspective and how this might pertain to how often they may use the social media platform from a college perspective. From semester 1, we see that it ranged all the way from never signing up to use it, but then actually never really engaging on it, under 5 times once a week, to more than once a week. And so seeing that there was a variety in terms of how a student may use it during the semester. In semester 2, because they only had 4 weeks in which they could become familiar with it and see how they could use it, so some differences there, but still a few that just they would sign up and then never use it, all the way to looking at least once a week or every other week. Some discussion in my semester 1, I asked them what they enjoyed about using it over the period of the semester, and a few key things kind of come out from these different responses that they had given me. They said that they could understand the keywords, they liked the information and reminders, they liked the extra notes and material that were given in class. It helped them remind them of different things that were coming up and update them on different vocabulary words that they should probably make sure that they're aware of and that they know, and finding out that it was easy to use. For semester 2, again, because they didn't have quite as much time to really engage on the social media platform, I only had a few different things that they specified, but that would be homework and study tips, having it be easily accessible through email, which Edmodo does allow, and you can actually even have it as an app on a phone. And then also seeing words of the day or the good content or daily words. So again, really capitalizing on that aspect of the word of the day. Some disadvantages that I saw throughout the use of using social media or this particular social media platform was that they would forget about it. It never really served them. They felt a unique purpose. They didn't feel that they use it to their potential, including the person who wrote that. They didn't use the app. They felt the emails were annoying, or they felt that maybe it was not really geared towards the college audience. So in discussion, and what this all means is that we really can't put a direct linkage on the use of Edmodo and higher learning in the classroom. It may help, but this pre-test, post-test doesn't really help gauge exactly maybe what was taking place. They did find it useful, they did find it beneficial, and through that then it can act as an additional resource, but maybe not perhaps the one place to really launch learning. That learning should first take place in the classroom and then have some additional resources through the use of social media. Some limitations, certainly from a student's perspective. It was a new platform for many. They had never used or even perhaps heard of Edmodo before, so they had to figure out how to learn it, and it would take time to go and see if there was any new content that had been generated. From the professor perspective, certainly the time and having to make sure that there was something that was created every day, that there was a lecture, and remembering, oh yes, need to post something on Edmodo. And then also the social media platform itself. The target audience does appear to be those who might be a little bit more towards the K through 12 versus the college audience. And then also the additional options. In this particular case, I did not use the polling or the assignments for additional assessment, and that could be something that could be done in the future. Speaking of the future research, what can be done here? More surveys could have been generated throughout the semester to see if there was an increase in learning through the utilization of Edmodo. There could be an incentive to use it if there were any extra credit points, or if it did become a requirement or part of the grade that a student would need. Or because this is a principles of marketing class, rather than just the professor creating the content and having the students consume it, the students could actually be co-creators of the content that is on the social media platform. So one application that could be used would be perhaps Instagram. And as the students are learning different elements in principles of marketing and seeing these things out there in the grocery store, at the gas station, or at a restaurant, they can take pictures of these different elements. And so it can allow for a visual representation of the learning that is taking place. The professor can use some of those pictures that are taken, implement them within the lectures, which could then perhaps motivate additional students to keep track of what's taking place and engage through social media in this aspect. So in conclusion, I'd like to leave off with this quote that I found. Social media, like any other instructional technologies, have value in our classrooms. However, we need to use them wisely and assess their impact carefully, which was kind of what the purpose of this study was to do. Otherwise, we can end up with students failing to make connections between the intended student learning outcomes and their social media activities. With that, I'd just like to say thank you so much for your attention today, and I'm available for questions.